Welcome to the Security by Design webinar series by Security Compass. I'm Isabella Orias, a product marketing manager here. And today we're joined by a friend of Security Compass and one of my favorite product security assurance experts, Tania Skinner. Tania Skinner started her career as a software engineer, and through the years, Tanya's filled many roles on software projects. And she was also the leader of the evolution of and adoption of Intel's secure development lifecycle for all product development. Her career has taken her to be the director of Flash Product Security, leading the secure development cycle and product security incident response team at Western Digital. Thank you, Tania, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Isabella. I'm delighted to be here. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining me. I wanted to share with you some thoughts and some research I've done on the challenges with product security and IoT devices.
Yeah, for sure. And with the recent introduction of the Biden-Harris admin's initiative of the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark, we really wanted to bring back this conversation. So thank you so much, Tania, for joining us. And I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you. So technology continues to evolve at lightning speeds. We have high-tech gadgets and devices integrated into every aspect of our lives. They're just unavoidable. They're everywhere, from baby monitors to digital doorbells with cameras and picture frames and refrigerators that are connected to the internet. Our lives are just filled with these helpful gadgets that can connect to a network to make communications, monitoring, and sharing easier. Now, these Internet of Things devices, or IoT devices, are basically a device that can connect wirelessly to a network and transmit data. The latest estimates, according to some studies, predict a steep increase in worldwide connected devices from 15 billion in 2023 to almost 30 billion by 2030. That's a lot of gadgets. Now, much of this increase is going to come in the form of consumer-focused gadgets, like our smart locks and voice assistants, etc. And all of these are connected somehow to the internet in some way. These helpful features might make things easier in life or more efficient, but they're not without risk. There's always the possibility that the device is not properly secured and could allow an unauthorized person or people to access your information or your data. And that's certainly not what we want. So consumers are stuck with this question of, can I trust these devices? Is my data secure? Well, unfortunately, research shows that attacks are on the rise. According to one study, the first 2 months of this year saw a 41% increase in the average number of weekly attacks compared to 2022. And Home Networks, in another study, saw an average of 8 attacks against devices every 24 hours. It's a lot of attacks. So what is a consumer to do? When you're selecting a device, particularly a device that connects to a network, how does a consumer know that the device has the necessary security features and that those security features are working properly? Does the consumer even know what questions to ask or what security features to look for? There's a study out of Carnegie Mellon, actually, that says that consumers claim that security is important to them, but these same consumers admit that it's often not a factor in their purchase decision. So why is that? And this study was really interesting because it supported a theory that I have. I believe that the vast majority of consumers don't know what security features the product should have to ensure that their data is protected. And it's also difficult to find this information. Even if you know what things to look for, can you find it? And assuming that they can find it, can you really assess it? Can you really say, oh, well, what they've described there, that sounds like a great security feature. That's going to protect my data. I'm thinking most consumers don't know that. But I thought, let's do a test here. Let's do a little experiment. So I got online and I looked up top digital picture frames, and I found a magazine article that, of course, had the ranking of, here are the best ones with all their features and blah, blah, blah. So I selected 2 of them and I said, okay, let's see what I can find about their security and privacy protections. So for one product, I'm going to call it Product X, I looked at an online retailer site and started looking at that product and looked at all the collateral and marketing material and everything that described what the product can do. But I couldn't find anything useful on security or privacy protections. So I thought, okay, I'll find the user manual. If I can get the user manual should tell me what I'm looking for. So then On that online retailer, I couldn't find the user manual, so I decided to do just a general internet search, Product X user manual. And my display popped up with a bunch of sponsored sites that advertise that they have manuals for tons of different products. And there were several of these sites. Now, not one of their domain names were related to the product manufacturer. And I don't like to go to sites I don't know and download things. So I thought, yeah, I'm not going to risk it. I'm not going to go to those sites that I don't know, and I'm not going to download material off those sites. That's just a bad idea. So I avoided those. So then I decided to go back to the manufacturer site. And once again, I couldn't find a user manual for this product. So then I went back to the online retailer I was looking at, and I started to go through the Q&A and reviews to see, well, what can I find? And what I found was very interesting. There's in the Q&A, you have customer questions and answers, and I am not the only customer saying, where's the manual? Where can I get a user manual for this? You can see the first person here asked for it, and the answer was, call product technical support. Why should I have to call product technical support to get a user manual? The next person answered, check on YouTube. I really don't want to watch a YouTube video, right? I just want a user manual. And then the next person who asked the question, the answer was, well, I didn't use a manual, but it's going to prompt you through setup, not answering the question. So then I looked at user reviews, and lo and behold, I found another user who had the same concern. This user actually was able to get a user manual, but as they called out, there are glaring omissions. There ought to be a specific section of the manual devoted to security, and there isn't. Now, on the plus side, I could pay money and buy a special book published by an independent writer that will tell me everything I need to know about this product and tips and tricks and unknown features. I'm not buying a book, right? I'm not buying the user manual. So honestly, I consider this a fail in my attempt to get more information about the security and privacy controls for this product. So now I moved on to the next product. We're going to call it product Y. And this time I actually had success. I was able to find an amazing website with a pile of info. And there is a ton of information here. And I've obviously redacted this to protect the innocent, right? But there was so much great info here. The problem is there's too much info. There was pages upon pages of information, and every page had links, and these links led to more links and links upon links. It's just too much. So kudos to this company for their excellent, detailed, and curated information. They are being very transparent, providing information about their security and privacy controls. Well done. But I still call this a fail. I call this a fail because the average consumer is going to look at this and their eyes are going to gloss over. They don't know what any of this means. No one wants to read all this. I work in this industry and I don't want to read all this, right?
Yeah.
So what's the average consumer to do, right? Let's put a pin on that question just for a minute and let's sidetrack. Let's talk about some of the realities of capitalism and the IoT market. We are in a capitalist economy, right? And there are many, many companies that are developing these Internet of Things or IoT devices. As you can see here, there's a lot of money to be made in this industry. These companies are in this business to make money, and they are all in a race. It's a race to be the first to market with a particular product. And the first to market generally gets the lion's share of the market. And that means they get the most sales and the most money. After that first product launch, the race evolves to who can deliver the next great feature that users absolutely must have. So these companies hope that this new feature will attract new customers as well as convince existing customers to upgrade their existing device to the next generation. This is the race. Now, in this race, connected devices today are primarily purchased based on the feature set and price. So let's remember what we learned a slide or two ago, right? We discovered that security is not a primary factor in the purchase of connected devices today. It should be, but it isn't. And we now understand why it isn't a primary driver in the purchasing decisions. Consumers don't have the expertise, and oftentimes the information isn't even available. So what is a consumer to do? Now, let's remember that in order to put these security controls in, to implement rigorous security controls, takes development team resources. It's not free. There's a whole bunch of work that has to go in to make these products secure. And it's a vicious dilemma that a company faces. Do I, as the creator of this product, invest my development team resources in adding better security controls? Or do I invest my development team resources in adding more features that would attract more customers? So for a company looking to make money, the answer is easy. You deliver the features that will sell more products. Consumers are not making their purchasing decisions based on the security properties of the product. They're making their purchasing decisions based on the newest and greatest features. So that's the position a company's in, right? Am I going to invest in things that the users aren't asking for and that they're not making purchasing decisions on, or am I investing in features that I know are going to get me the sale? So this puts the entire industry in this vicious circle. And once again, what's a consumer to do? How do we ensure that this rapid technological advancement that is now critical to everyday life is safe and trustworthy? Now I'm going to take you on another little side tangent here. Let's take a look back at history, because obviously throughout history, we've had these rapid advancements in technology that have made huge differences in people's lives. So let's see what we can learn from a rapid advancement in technology in the past. And let's start by looking at electricity. I know this was a long time ago and we all take it for granted, but I think there's a lot to be learned here. Electricity was officially invented in the 1700s by Ben Franklin. And of course, it took a while to establish the infrastructure and the army of electrical engineers and electricians to propagate this amazing advancement in technology. By the end of the 19th century, electricity was being rapidly added to businesses and residences. And as with all new technology, some of these early implementations were good and some of them were not so good. As a result of this, all these homes and businesses now getting electricity installed and getting appliances, lamps, etc., there was all of a sudden a huge increase in fires. Fires caused by faulty electrical components in both commercial and residential buildings, as well as faulty appliances. Now, do you think the average business or homeowner had any idea what features or attributes to look for in the electrical wiring components or products? When they were interviewing electricians and getting their bids for installing electricity in their house, did they have a checklist of questions to make sure that these guys knew what they were doing? No, they didn't know what questions to ask or how to interpret the answers. And that's assuming they even asked the right questions. So the consumers didn't have the expertise. It was a terrible position for a consumer. Enter the insurance industry. Who had to pay when there were all these fires? Well, the wise consumers had homeowners policies, right? Or the businesses had policies for fires. And the insurance industry had to make a whole pile of payments they really didn't want to make. And they had a vested interest in reducing the number of fires. And now we get our MIT graduate electrical engineer, William Henry Merrill, and he arrives to save the day. He was employed by the Boston Board of Fire Underwriters as an electrical inspector. And he saw the problems in both the electrical components, and that includes the materials used, as well as the configuration in both construction and appliances. And he proposed to his employer that they open a lab to independently test products for fire and electrical safety. This was a revolutionary concept, right? Now, unfortunately, his employer turned him down. They didn't want to do that. But in 1893, he moved to Chicago, and there he got a job in a similar capacity working for the Chicago Fire Underwriters Association. He did the similar work, saw the same need and the same problems, and now he lobbied once again for this lab to do this independent testing. And thankfully, there were some brilliant people at Chicago Fire Underwriters Association and Western Insurance Union who decided to fund this effort. And with $350, he opened a small laboratory and started what we all know as Underwriters Laboratory, also known as UL. And he issued his first UL certification of the safety of an electrical component back in 1894. And this certified that the product satisfied a set of rigorous requirements to prevent a fire hazard. Game changer. So UL today, UL or Underwriters Laboratories still exists today 129 years later. The UL mark is now the single most accepted certification mark in the United States, and it appears on 22 billion products annually. That's a lot of UL marks. So since that initial UL report, UL has published a mountain of standards and specs. You can see this is just a fraction of what you see on the screen of the standards and specs that they have now provided the world for how to produce these products safely. And UL is still in existence today, 129 years later. Today, almost every product with an electrical component you purchase in the United States has a visual tag or label on it indicating that it is either UL or ETL listed or certified. ETL is another independent certification body that certifies products to the UL standard. So even though ETL is a different certification body, they're certifying the UL standards that were set forth. So when shopping for electrical products today, most consumers don't even look for the little UL tag or label on their products. They don't even look for it because satisfying these requirements is now the baseline. It's assumed, right? When I buy a lamp, I'm not worried it's going to burn down my house. I assume it's passed UL and is safe to use. There was a time, however, when consumers did look for that UL tag, when there were problems and there were fires, and they had the assurance that this UL certification or listing tag told them that this product has been tested to rigorous standards and it is good. It is safe to use. Now, some online retailers, even today, have a filter option. When you're searching for a lamp or an appliance, they actually have a filter option today where you can say, give me UL listed or certified. That is fantastic. This is now the assumed safe baseline for electrical appliances. It took a whole bunch of expensive fires and an individual who was passionate about improving safety of this new technological advancement to bring about this critical change in the electrical industry. So if we look at where we're at today with respect to our IoT devices and all the security and privacy breaches, I'd say we definitely have our fires. Our fires are there. There's news articles every day of breaches. But so we have the fires. Now we just need the truly passionate people to come together and bring about the change that's needed. And I think it's started. I think we have some hope here. So first of all, there are different independent security certifications in the industry for device security and privacy for IoT devices. And UL even has one. Now, this is just a short list. I just did a quick internet search of, security certifications for devices, and this is what I came up with. Now, every one of these has their own kind of set of requirements and properties they look for, et cetera. And it's a great start. And kudos to these organizations for coming up with these. They've laid a good foundation. But there's a problem here. The first problem is that it is completely optional to a company whether or not they pursue one of these certifications. So I'm the manufacturer of product X and I'm selling product X and it's an IoT device. Am I going to get my product certified? Well, I have to pay to do that, right? I have to pay, and there's a whole pile of work. Whenever you go for a certification, there's this massive documentation trail you have to have, and there are interviews and there are audits and there are assessments. This is not generally a kind of quick and easy process. So the company has to choose, I'm going to take on this extra work, I'm going to pay this money, but for what? Will it lead to more sales? Doubtful. So I went to some of the biggest online retailers for electronic devices, and not a single one of them had a filter so that I could filter on any of these certifications. There is no filter option for product security or privacy certifications. So there's no easy way, once again, we don't have a mechanism for consumers to even find a device that might have gone to the extra trouble and cost to do this certification. There's no mechanism. So when I'm making my purchase, I can't say only show me devices that have achieved this certification. So these certifications are great and they're a great start, but they still don't solve the problem because we're not addressing the motivation for companies to pursue them. There's no motivation for a company to pursue one of these. It just costs them more money. So what's it going to take to motivate these companies to do something proactively to demonstrate to consumers that their products are secure. And I know a lot of people are cringing right now, and I'm right there with you. It's legislation. So in 2022, European lawmakers proposed a new set of product rules to apply to connected devices. The proposal is called the EU Cyber Resilience Act, and it's still making its way through the European legislation process, but it is expected to become regulation sometime in 2025. Fingers crossed. This proposal would require a legally binding attestation of compliance for some product categories, saying that the product meets these strict requirements. But for other product categories of a higher security risk, it would require an external third-party certification, similar to a UL listing, right? And that certification would then, as well as this attestation, would result in a label or tag of some sort to be attached to the device itself. So looking at the device, a consumer can see, oh, this has the EU Cyber Resilience Act mark. This has gone through the rigorous testing, et cetera. It's good to go. Now, the US is a bit behind, but progress is being made. In August of 2023, the US government announced the US Cyber Trust Mark. And similar to the EU proposal, it's going to include a set of rigorous requirements and a visible label on products to indicate that they have met those requirements. The program is aimed at helping consumers make more informed purchasing decisions about device privacy and security. Now, the devices are still being worked out. And the US government is working through all of its proposals, and NIST has a standard for what those requirements would be. I think it's actually being reviewed now, and they might be making tweaks as a part of this effort. But the program is expected to launch late 2024. It's going to start out as voluntary, but the intention is for it to become mandatory. This could be a game changer. This could be an absolute game changer. Now, we know that voluntary programs are not enough, but with the right backing from consumers and companies alike, hopefully we can accelerate this getting to mandatory. I'm not a fan of tons of legislation overall, but having worked in the industry for many years, I see this as an excellent solution for consumers to get the assurance they need when they're making these purchasing decisions. So you as a consumer, what can you do? You're not without power here. You do have options. The first thing you need to do is get informed, review the proposal, understand what it is the US government is proposing. And if you're an EU citizen, please go review that proposal. Figure out what is it that they're asking for and what does it mean to you. And then once it launches, you as a consumer need to look for this mark. Now, we need to go on a campaign here. We need to make sure that our retailers actually utilize this mark. We need to go to every brick and mortar store and ask the salesperson, show me the products that have the US Cyber Trust mark. If enough of us do that, those retail stores will have signs, they'll have markers, they'll have marketing campaigns to show you we carry products that satisfy the US Cyber Trust mark. But it starts with us, the consumers, saying to them, this is important to me. I want you to show me this. Same thing for your online retailers. Email them, inundate them with email, have an email onslaught to your online marketplace customer support line saying, I want a filter for the US Cyber Trust mark so I can find devices that comply. Get everyone you know, once this is launched, to go out and say, give me that filter. And then the last thing is you have to accept the fact that these products that satisfy this, they put a lot more work into it. And those products are probably going to cost a little bit more. Be willing to spend it. Ask yourself, is the security and privacy of my personal data and access to my home network, is it worth it for me to spend a few more dollars? It probably is. Okay, so now in the end, we know that money talks. And that's why we have to put our money where our mouth is. So what can IoT device companies do? Once again, they need to review this proposal. They need to understand what's being proposed. And as a company, if you don't have robust product security requirements today, or you don't have a secure development lifecycle today, you need to start working on it ASAP. You need to make sure that you're incorporating security into your products today. And you can also start incorporating the NIST specification. It's NIST IR 8425. That is probably going to be the foundation for the US Cyber Trust Mark. Go read the NIST spec. Start to incorporate those requirements into your product requirements today. You also want to look for security tools that can help you on this journey. There are tools like Security Compass's SD Elements, which have a knowledge base of security and privacy requirements and controls, and they cross-reference it to various standards, et cetera. And those tools can help you identify, based on what type of product you're developing, which of those requirements you absolutely must incorporate. And they also will give you validation tasks too. How do you validate this? Use them. There's been a wealth of research and expertise poured into the development of those knowledge bases. You can benefit from it. And then you want to be the first one to pursue this certification. Don't wait till it becomes mandatory. Go after it now. Pursue this certification and beat your competition to it. Be the first one. And then once the mark launches, your instructions are pretty much the same as the consumers. Go to the brick and mortar stores. Demand that they show you products that have the US Cyber Trust Mark. Email your online retailers. You want this to be a filter. And then as a company, you should launch a media campaign. Blast it on all of your social media presences. Raise awareness of this trust mark. What does it mean? Help educate consumers. Help them understand why this is important, and then advertise that your products have it. And that becomes a competitive advantage. If your competition doesn't have it, you can win here. So, in conclusion, as consumers, we're really in a tough spot when it comes to purchasing these devices. There isn't a good mechanism today for us to make purchasing decisions where security is our top consideration. It's just not possible. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. If the EU and US proposed legislation initiatives are successful, these cyber trust certification and labeling programs could become mandatory, and hopefully in the near future, we will have both the requirements for security and privacy protections in our connected devices, as well as the assurance that a product we're purchasing meets those standards. Thank you for listening to my ramblings on this topic. I hope you found it interesting and informative.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much, Tanya. I know when you first told me about like the UL story, I just like immediately had to race to like I think it was my phone charger, and I was like, oh yeah, there it is, the little UL, it's right there. And you do take it for granted, like that being, this rapid sort of spread of the use of that technology, and then not having those standards in place. And like that's exactly where we are today. I really liked how you put that with we've got these fires burning already, and we need to find a way to change the game, right? So I've got a couple questions here. Some of them you probably like started to address in your presentation there, but do you have any more specific steps that you would recommend organizations start to take to prepare for that compliance with the US Cyber Trust Mark and or the EU Cyber Resilience Act? Like what should product owners do to start preparing for it? And what should security teams do to start preparing? And maybe even like what should development teams do to start preparing? And I know that was a lot, but I think like those are all most of the components of the teams that would have to be concerned with this. So what would you recommend that they start with?
The first thing, as I mentioned, is you have to have an SDL. You have to have a secure development lifecycle and secure development practices. You absolutely want to have that. You also want to make sure you have security requirements. Now, there are many sources of security requirements, but if you're an IoT connected device, go pull up that NIST standard, because the US Cyber Trust Mark is probably going to require, that's probably the baseline they're starting with. I did see that referenced in some of the articles I read about it. They might be making changes to it now or adding to it. Oftentimes these standards evolve over time, but I would start with that. What are all the requirements in that? And start implementing those. And the other piece is, security controls are difficult to implement and do well, and they're difficult to validate. There's so many corner cases and attack models, et cetera. So what you don't want to be doing is for every product your company has, developing a unique way of doing authentication or authorization. You really want to use robust, reusable, vetted components, develop it once, and then reuse that same component in all of your products for the security controls, right? Do it once, do it well. And then if you reuse it and don't reinvent the wheel, let's do a whole new authorization model, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will then get efficiency in your development and you will get basically cost improvements. It'll cost you less if you reuse well-established, vetted security controls. So start with that NIST standard, make sure you have an SDL, and do reusable, well-vetted security control components. Does that work?
Yeah, it definitely does. Like we're big fans of reusable components.
Yeah.
The next question I have here is that one of the biggest challenges in any cybersecurity program is that unless something is mandated or mandatory, teams will prioritize revenue generating activities over activities that minimize risk. So since the US Cyber Trust Mark is currently not mandatory, we know it probably will be. How do cybersecurity professionals convince the product owners to prioritize these types of activities?
You know, it's a tough question and there's no perfect answer for it. Um, I, fundamentally, there's a couple things that come to mind. If you're the company that doesn't prioritize this, or at least start on that journey now, you're going to be last to market. You are going to be late to the game. Um, First of all, we do know consumers care about security. Even if they can't filter on it for their purchase decisions today, we know they care. It is important to consumers, and there's so many studies which show that. So we need to be doing what's right. So that we need to be doing some security controls and some protections. We absolutely do. Um, if we know these things are coming and they're going to start out voluntarily, and we're hopeful that they become mandatory, this is one of those decisions that the companies have to make. But there's going to be a cost. If you're the last one to the game when it becomes mandatory, you're going to be out, right? And it'll cost you more. Um, I don't have a great answer to that one, Isabella, unfortunately,
Oh,
other than we
I
hope the
think,
companies do the right thing and they
yeah,
prepare for it. And we as consumers, we need to influence and say, we want this.
for sure. I mean, I think it is the right answer to volunteer to be on the right side of history, right?
Yes.
And be first that way. But another question I have is if do you think that once compliance with these regulations become embedded in our day to day, that it will lead to ensuring that all other products are built with security by default?
Um, just like in the UL journey, they started with, the materials used for electrical wiring and the appliances. They
Mm-hmm.
started with just a couple standards, right? But then it exploded. Go to their website and see all the standards that they have. So I think this will pave the way. It will start the way, and it will make it kind of an acceptable and standard practice over time. It won't happen overnight, but I think once we start with this and now it becomes acceptable and common that every device needs this certification and mark, it becomes that much easier on the next type of product and the next type of technological advancement. I think it paves the way.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah, and I think it'll help us get there.
Great. The last question I have is how can retailers communicate and promote the US Cyber Trust Mark? And I think you did talk about this a little bit, but do you have any more advice for retailers and on how they would communicate and promote that?
I think one of the things that retailers have to do is educate their sales force, right? Once this comes out, they need to educate their sales force on what it is and what it means. Because one of the things that can happen is if they do have, the campaign and the signs up, whatever, and they've
Mhm.
got the US Cyber Trust Mark, they're going to have consumers ask questions about it, right? What is this? What does it mean? And their salespeople should be able to answer questions on that, right? And the consumers are going to be wondering, why is this product a little more expensive than this one? Or maybe it's
Right.
maybe it's a big difference, right?
Mhm.
Um, Once again, the salespeople need to be able to answer that. Well, this product has achieved a certification for a rigorous set of security and privacy controls. And you can have high confidence that your data and your device is protected for those devices that have this mark. These ones that don't have it, so I think there's not only just a campaign and have the signage, et cetera, in the stores and have it obvious which ones have the US Cyber Trust Mark, but they have to educate their salespeople so that the salespeople can answer questions of consumers as well as help educate consumers. Because if we have better security and privacy controls in our devices, we all win, right?
For sure.
We don't want to make it easy for the attackers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our questions and the end of our time here. I wanted to say if you found any of this content helpful at all and you wish to look for more, we do have more content at securitycompass.com/resources, including other videos that we've done with Tania. And so thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much, Tania, for your time today. Really appreciated it.
Thank you, Isabella. I love working with my partners at Security Compass. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.